Welcome to Pig's Ear and Review here at the Tojo Dojo, one of the only places where we're talking about what we've been watching. And we're back for, I guess I can call this part 2 of our Halloween spooktacular. Kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
A little bit, I suppose, partially. It's all right. We'll get into why here in a second. But before we continue, make sure to like and comment and subscribe for what we're, everything we're talking about. Let us know if there's other stuff you want to see us chat about as well. But I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose as always. How you doing today?
Good, mate. You?
Pretty good. I'm excited. I got Resident Evil downloadable content downloading as we speak, so stay tuned for that next time. And got Bayonetta 3 coming in the mail today, so I'm excited for that as well.
Oh, so you're not boycotting that? Okay.
No, I pre-ordered this game 5 years ago. I'm not letting that go. It's literally been that long since they've announced it. It's insane. So
it's nice to know you hate voice actors. Okay.
Yeah, no, obviously that's the sole reason why I'm buying this still. So today we're going to be talking about She-Hulk, the new Hellraiser, Welcome to Wrexham, and then the Munsters movie. A bit of a smorgasbord of horror, if you will. All the things here. So with that, let's just turn it over to you to start talking about She-Hulk.
Well, you watched this one as well. I don't know if you regretted it as much as
How dare you?
How dare I? Straight off the bat, I know we complained about a lot of Marvel stuff recently.
No.
I still think the majority of Marvel stuff is okay to good.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's just not exciting anymore.
Yeah.
I think is the main issue about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is... I know I gave Werewolf by Night a thumbs down recently. Mm-hmm. But this is the first one where I'm like, okay, this is just straight up bad.
Yeah, I had some mixed feelings about this one because if we look back on, I don't know what episode it was, however many times ago we did this, but I was actually excited for this show because of its potential. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think I may have mentioned this, but Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, was an old Adult Swim show where, like, they reused all the characters that, frankly, no one wanted to from, like, Hanna-Barbera and, like, older shows. Mm-hmm. And they could have done a similar concept with this show, and they actually started to do it a little bit with this show where they kind of brought in a couple of those weird characters for, like, a quick courtroom case, like, type of situation. And I was like, man, if they would have done this would have been an awesome show. But they did nothing like that, and it was a massive disappointment.
It was really paced weird as well, because, like, obviously the first episode is like, oh, this is how she gets her powers, which, okay, every first episode of every Marvel show about a new character is going to be that, okay? Like, I'm fine with that. But then it becomes that sort of, like, half comedy, half paralegal type thing. Mm-hmm. I think the issue with this show, and I've described a few things like this, is it feels kind of smug. Yeah. It thinks it's a lot funnier than it is.
Well, especially because the whole thing that they kept pointing out about the show was like, oh, it's this fourth wall breaking thing, wink, wink. But then anytime they did that, they kind of just like left it there too. It was like, wink, wink, isn't this funny? And there was a bit of smugness in that sense too, but like it just wasn't even funny either.
No. And this is they labeled it as like a comedy, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's probably the least funny Marvel thing I've ever watched. Like your average Marvel movie or show's got funnier moments.
Yeah, because they're usually written well. I mean, to be frank, like, this one, maybe there was a couple laughs here and there. Maybe the first episode where they have Bruce and like, okay, that was fun banter. But like, other than that, I'm like, okay, this isn't that funny.
No, and I think it was like the third or fourth episode. It was her friends, like the woman who's like a secretary and the other guy who works in her office. Like they went off and did a little side adventure. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there and I'm like, who the fuck are these people? They've been in like one scene the entire season up to this point, but they're trying to play off each other. Like, isn't it a fun dynamic? These two finally hanging out? And I'm like, I don't know who the fuck either of them are.
It's weird because, like, on one hand, they're trying to have a story that goes across all the episodes, but on the other hand, they're trying to make it episodic, and they kind of fail at both. And it just like, yeah, to your point, I don't know who these people are. Why should I care? It's not particularly funny. Like, I just don't like, to be honest. I don't know what the point of the show was. I guess at the end of the day.
Content.
Well, I guess I could say that about a lot of shows, to be fair. But
Yeah.
like what? Okay, let me put it a different way. What really was like the growth of the character over the season? I mean, like, okay, she's She-Hulk now. I get it. She's quote unquote more confident, but like,
Is she really though? Because
No,
like they try to
right?
make out like, oh, people just want to know her because she's She-Hulk, right?
Yeah,
Not because she's oh, fuck, what was her name? See, that's like
yeah, Jennifer Walters, right?
that's it, Jennifer Waters. Not
Yeah,
because
yeah,
she's Jennifer Waters, right?
yeah.
But by the end of the series, like Jennifer Waters seems the same person she did at the beginning. So Jennifer Waters was always like really sassy,
Mhm.
even before she got and like very sarcastic before she got the powers.
Yeah.
What would have been cool is if she was like shy and introverted, and then she got the She-Hulk powers, and then you saw like more of that outgoing personality come out into the character. Like the thing with Spider-Man is that he's the nerdy teenager who gains confidence.
Yeah, exactly. There's character growth. Like there's change over time because like if they end up the same way they started, why is that interesting, I guess.
No,
Yeah.
just sometimes she can turn green and punch people through walls. Which,
I mean, I will say on the She-Hulk side, I thought they did a good job with the character design. Like it seemed cool, like the transformations were fine. Like I think that aspect I guess was interesting enough, but like other than that, I mean, I don't. I guess this is they. I guess this is a spoiler, but then they sort of showed this, I think, in the trailers. A certain other character gets introduced to the MCU. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
yeah. I mean, for me, it was just weird because I'd recently watched his show,
Mhm.
and he seems very like much the same character, but he doesn't seem to fit in that world.
Just because it's so like serious, or
Yeah, like light-hearted stuff like that. Whereas everyone's being silly. Like he always had like a sarcastic undertone, like every Marvel character does.
yeah.
But he didn't seem this. Well, it's not a sitcom, is it? But you know, like the modern sitcom where they talk to the camera, sort of Modern
Yeah.
Family, The Office style. He
Hmm.
didn't really fit with the jokes constantly. Like
Hmm.
it felt weird. And the fourth wall breaking, I just never got on board with. That you've got to be funny in the first place to pull that off.
Well, yeah, exactly. That in its the breaking of that fourth wall in itself can't just be the joke. There has to be more context or support for it. But then, like I said earlier, they just kept doing that over and over and over, and like wink, wink, talk to the camera. Okay, go back, and it's like there literally was no joke, like at all.
Like so, the last episode, I won't spoil it, but it really breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, it goes a little off the walls.
Right. Which I would have been. If they introduced Deadpool into the MCU that way, that would have been great.
It makes sense for that character.
Right.
Yeah.
If he like left one universe and went into another,
Hmm.
like that would have been funny, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But when you start bad mouthing the other movies and shows in the universe that you're part of, that you're the worst part of,
Hmm. Yeah.
you don't pull it off. You don't pull
Yeah,
it off at all.
and I think also at that last episode, like I know they were trying to sort of poke fun at people online, like like either critiquing shows or like who are just in general. Like I mean, there's definitely a central theme of the show of like women not getting treated like appropriately and seriously, like at work and stuff. Which obviously that's a very legitimate concern. But then the way they handle it, especially with that kind of group of guys at the end is like they're trying to like poke fun at them, but then also like kind of acknowledging that that's their core audience of the show as well, like in trying to like critique it, which is I guess okay to do, but then they just end up once again failing and it's just like, who is this show even for anymore? Like it was just weird.
Yeah, I think a lot of studios and people like that use outrage to their benefit for free advertising.
Sure.
And I think this is a case of that, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. Like, you're poking the bear. Like, they filmed this, like, what, 6 months before it came out, right?
Right.
And they're joking about all the critiques people are going to have about it.
Which is exactly what happened.
Right. Because they know what's going to upset people online or, fuel the outrage to create a cycle. And then it becomes a one person against another person, blah, 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 right?
Yes.
And keeps it in conversation.
Yeah.
I don't like this brand of marketing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it started with that Ghostbusters movie, the reboot one, not the most recent one.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Where it became like a massive one side against the other. And at the end of the day, I didn't care who was in it, whatever. At the end of the day, the movie just wasn't good. That was all I cared about. It didn't look good in the trailers, and then when I watched the movie, I didn't think it was very funny.
Yeah, like I try my best to go in as unbiased as I can. Like, I just want to see a fun movie, and it just fell flat.
Yeah. And it's just, you see it with everything that, like, we were talking about Lord of the Rings before we started filming, right?
Yeah.
And you said, like, oh, people, like, upset with the new show. And I don't know, because I've not really followed any of it. But I just, that's just part of marketing now. Mm-hmm. Every show, every movie, everyone's got to be outraged about it or love it.
Right. You can't just like something.
Yeah. Or dislike it, even. Like, it's okay to like or dislike something. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think the other interesting piece too, that because, like, once again, I try my best to be as unbiased as I can with anything that we're going to talk about or watch. So with this show in particular, though, there's a few people at work who I chat with about just shows and movies in general, and there's a couple who I talk to about some of the Marvel stuff who also keeps up with it. And in particular, there were two women who I work with who I know watch this, and I asked, like, okay, obviously as like a guy, it could be seen like, oh, you don't like it because women and whatever other dumb, stupid reason that people are wanting to use. But I asked them, like, as women, do you like this show? Like, does this speak to you? Does this feel like it represents things that you go with? Like, did this mean anything to you that they were touting it as like such a female-centric show? And both of them said no. It was horrible. And so I was like, okay, it's fine if you don't like it. Don't get me wrong. But that aspect in particular, they also agreed, like, no, it failed on like all fronts. It wasn't, it didn't do anything that they were claiming it to do as like this next like female superhero. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me then.
Yeah, but you know what? It's also okay if a movie doesn't speak to you because it just doesn't hit the notes for you. Like,
right.
Did you ever watch Booksmart?
I don't think so.
Booksmart? No. Essentially, like, you see all the quotes on posters and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like they pretty much advertised it as the female version of Superbad.
Okay.
It came out like 3 or 4 years ago. It was like Olivia Wilde's movie that she directed. And it got like great reviews and everything like that.
Sure.
And I watched it and I was like, it was okay. Didn't think it was great. Like, I can see like the Superbad influence because it's just about two girls going to a party instead of two guys. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I much prefer Superbad. And my wife was like, I actually really enjoyed it. She's like, I don't think you understood, like, something, like, not understood, but some of the messages didn't hit with you the same way.
You may not be able to empathize with it as directly, potentially.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, in that scenario, I kind of get it, right?
Sure.
But then, again, she did not like She-Hulk.
Right, okay.
She was like, no, this is really boring. She's like, every week we were like, come on, we got to watch it because we got to keep, like,
just obligated.
Just on the off chance fucking, like, Tony Stark comes back to life or whatever.
Right.
Because we got to keep up to date on the MCU because we committed 15 years ago and now we're stuck.
Yeah, it's the soap opera effect. You're in for life.
Yeah. But, she was like, oh, no, it's awful.
Yeah. And it's just amazing because, like, I think I don't know if it was Rotten Tomatoes or some other movie. I was just generally looking up reviews for this, and there's such a dichotomy between the allegedly critic reviews and audience scores being complete opposites for this show, and it's
but neither mean anything, do they?
no, yeah, and I usually don't lend too much credence to those things, but I think I'm just curious then why. What were some of these reasons why it was still rated so highly? And it's like they're the most shallow reasons I could find, basically.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I'm going to give a thumbs down.
I'm going to have to agree with you. And kind of with what you were saying earlier, it's not often, even though we do give a lot of shit to some of the MCU stuff, most of it usually is fine to good. Like, I'm very rarely, like, leaving a Marvel, whether it's a movie or any of the Disney Plus shows, going like, God, I fucking hated this. This was horrible. I don't think I've done that to date. This show probably, I mean, Werewolf by Night also was a little lackluster, but like this is probably the first time that I can very confidently say this was a miserable experience watching most of the show. It just, maybe a couple little gems here and there, sure, but it wasn't great.
All right, mate. Let's
down.
get out of here. Let's go to the next one.
All right. Sounds good. We'll go to something a little bit more uplifting. A movie called Hellraiser.
Now, did this go woke as well? I thought I saw Hellraiser's now a little bit woman. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Mm-hmm. So thumbs down. On to the next one.
Right.
No, okay. Have you seen any of the Hellraiser movies?
No. I remember being like 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And like seeing, like, you know how like the HSs used to randomly like re-release old movies and stuff like that, and they had like a little stand with Hellraiser on, and asking my mum if we could get that movie. She was like,
absolutely not.
I was like 6.
That's probably for a good decision. From your
I just thought it looked cool, the guy with the pins, you know.
Yep, good old Pinhead. So Hellraiser is interesting because last week, I was of course talking about Halloween, and I had mentioned kind of the classic like horror franchises like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Those are kind of like the core ones you think of in terms of like the icons, right? Like the slasher, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Hellraiser is unique because I would not call them slasher movies necessarily, but by the look, like Pinhead, you clearly know what that character looks like. He can fit that bill very easily of being with those icons, which is great.
Yeah.
But I would not call them slasher movies. They're very supernatural, like hell, alternate dimension kind of like interesting stories. They're almost like, frankly, like borderline sci-fi and horror kind of put together, which was really cool. So take a guess with this latest Hellraiser movie. What numbered movie do you think it is?
Can I say 6? Because I think there's at least. Oh, really?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think I've heard of at least 4. Like,
yeah. So, like all those other horror franchises I mentioned, it did run its course over the years. Yep. But yes, this was the 11th. But granted, it is billed as more of like a reboot, kind of return to form, so to speak. I would say if you're going to watch the original ones, any of them, watch the first 3. I think those are all classics, very good movies. 4 through 10 varies. I will say there's some notable things about them. Number 4, I believe, has Adam Scott's first film role. He's in that movie.
Okay.
And number 8 has Henry Cavill as in one of his first roles. Hellraiser 8 Hellworld, which is when the internet started becoming popular. I love that movie.
So is this part of the DCEU?
Yeah, it's the extended universe, right? So it's like somewhere over here, basically. Okay. So he's part of that too. But other than those notable moments, the rest of them are pretty shit. Like in the latter part of them. But yeah, 1 through 3 definitely worth it. But as far as this reboot goes, it was the cool part about it is it has Clive Barker, which was the author of the original Hellraiser book, or Hellbound Heart, I should say, which then spawned the first movie, and he's returning to kind of help produce this new one. So after the first couple, he was not involved, which really shows with the quality of those older ones, like they're not the best. So he's back and he's involved again, and really, like I said, it's not like a retelling of the first movie or anything. It is kind of like a modern reboot, so to speak. Of that story in a sense, but really at the end of the day, the story is fairly straightforward. There's basically this little puzzle box where whenever people mess with it, it sort of summons these alternate dimension creatures called the Cenobites.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, look, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
And just to clarify, not Cinnabites like Cinnabon, Cenobites. So
Oh, so
slightly
this isn't
different.
part of the Better Call Saul universe either.
No, but granted, they had a missed opportunity to do a tie-in with Cinnabon on this. I
Yeah.
swear they should have done it called Cinnabites. I think that would have been perfect, but they missed that opportunity.
Yeah. That's why you got fired from the marketing team, right?
Yeah, see, look, I have all the good ideas up here. You just got to hire me here. So it's basically this puzzle box. It summons them, and it's the whole concept of Hellraiser is the kind of the balance between pain and pleasure. And if you've ever seen how the characters look, it's very tied into the BDSM kind of mindset or things in that group, if you'll call it, in terms of what they look like and the
Community, I think, is the term.
Community. Yeah, sorry, I was looking for the right word. Community. So it's not like overtly like ultra sexual per se, but there's definitely nods to it without spoiling anything, especially with the way the characters are looking. So they definitely bring back some older creature designs, and they do give a modern look to Pinhead. But yes, to what you said earlier, the big thing with this movie was they cast a new person as Pinhead, because the guy who did it for the first 8 movies, he's like, I don't know, 60 or 70 years old right now. I don't think they're going to bring him back probably for this one. But he did praise the work of this new person. But yeah, she, if I'm not mistaken, also a trans woman, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was in the news press release for the movie. And she did a great job, honestly. She I think I mean, it is a different portrayal of that character from those older movies, as expected, but it's very much she fit the bill for what the character needed. So I think she did an awesome job, honestly. So it is a different feel, but still a good representation. But really, the central story, other than what I just said, is these characters find this box, and these creatures keep coming after them, and they need to essentially escape and get rid of them without spoiling it. But really, that's really what the Hellraisers movies are. It's about these creatures, this kind of pain and pleasure dichotomy, and shit coming from hell, and like it's just, I mean, it's a fun horror movie, honestly. So I would say, oh, sorry, the other part I'll mention, this is a Hulu movie. So similar to Prey, which we talked about however many weeks ago, I was curious of how that would stack up, because as I think you were saying, Prey kind of, I think it had a lot of money, but then it sort of didn't look cheap per se, but I think you were saying it kind of looked very clean, right?
Yeah.
So with this, I don't know what the budget was. Maybe I'll have to look that up later. But I think they did a good job, especially with like the creature designs and the set pieces. So I don't think anything looked, it didn't look like a made-for-TV movie or anything necessarily. I mean, sure, it could have been even crazier if it was like a true theatrical release, but like it didn't look bad, which is fine. I don't think it needed to be over the top either. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think it looked fine for a Hulu movie, and I'm curious. I'm curious how many more times they're going to do stuff like this with like Prey, Hellraiser. Like, do you know of any other ones that are slated to come out that are doing something like that?
No, I honestly, I wasn't even sure, and I'm still not sure if Prey was meant to be a theatrical release and just kind of got moved.
Oh, that's a good
not.
point.
I know. I think they're doing another Alien movie or TV show for Hulu.
Okay.
Because it was the guy who did the TV show Fargo and
oh yeah,
what was that? What was the X-Men Legion?
Yeah, got it.
The guy who did those is doing an Alien TV show for Hulu.
I mean, I'd be up for it. I mean, as long as they're good stories and quality, like I'm all good for it. So yeah, I think for it being a Hulu movie, they did a good job in that sense with producing it. So overall, I mean, I wouldn't say this is like. Here's the one thing that I'm afraid is going to happen. I think it's done moderately well from what I can tell. People seem to enjoy it, myself included. Like I'm going to give it a thumbs up, but like. What I don't want to happen after this is then they say, oh, Hellraiser's back and we're going to do a new one every year. And then they just run it into the ground again. Like, that's what I don't want. And I don't want to say that this one replaces any of those original ones either. If you like this movie, then you should definitely check out the original, 3 movies. And I think you'll get a similar but still different experience, especially because they were made, mid to late 80s, I think, roughly around that time. So definitely worth checking out. and I'm curious what they are going to do with it next. And the only reason I say that, even though I literally just said I don't want them to run into the ground, what is interesting is apparently there's another Hellraiser project in development for, I think, HBO that's coming out next year, like unrelated to this one, that Clive Barker is also involved with, the original creator. But I think they might be doing like a TV show or something. Granted, maybe that's fallen apart with this
Maybe
latest
the
release.
rights are just all over the place or something.
It's something weird. Like all these horror movies, I swear to God, they have the worst issues with rights. They keep transferring over
Well,
the
it happened
years.
with like Friday the 13th, didn't it? Like the game got shut down because someone went, actually, we have the rights to that.
Yeah, the original creator was essentially suing for ownership, and it's just wild how that stuff keeps transferring. So I don't know if that other HBO or whatever that other project is still happening, but if it is, like, yeah, I am curious. But like, once again, this is a franchise that I'm like, okay, it exists. I don't really need more. The original ones still stand on their own.
Yeah.
This one is fine. But yeah, I mean, it was still good, and I'm curious. I guess I'll still have an open mind about it if they decide to do something next. So, but either way, definitely a thumbs up, and it was nice to see a new Hellraiser project for the first time in a long time. So that was cool.
Nice.
All right, over to you.
Well, yet again, you also watched this, I believe, all the way through.
I know, a rare occasion.
Yeah. Welcome to Wrexham with Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were like, let's buy a football team.
I wish I had that kind of money. I could just be like, hey, let's just buy a sports team.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't exactly go glamorous and buy like a Premier League team or anything for like 200 million.
I was going to say, yeah, you're definitely the football expert here, so enlighten us about kind of what happened here.
So in the UK and pretty much anywhere that is in America, you can get promoted and relegated out of your leagues. So in theory, me and you could, if we were in England, be like, let's start a team. And in theory, if we won every single game we played, eventually we'd be playing alongside like Man United and Chelsea and Arsenal and those teams, right? And Wrexham are in the fifth tier.
Yeah.
So they'd have to get promoted 4 times to be in the Premier League. Right. And I don't know why. Rob McElhaney, well, I do know why, because they wanted to make a show and make a little bit of money.
Right.
Because Rob McElhaney apparently watched a documentary called Sunderland Till I Die, which is on Netflix, which I also watched, and I really, really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, you told me about it. That's on my list to eventually get to.
Yeah. I think even if you're not into like football, it's still a fun watch. I enjoyed this show for starters. Okay, I really like Rob McElhaney. I like Ryan Reynolds. They're both really funny guys.
Right.
This is more a vehicle for their comedy. I feel like it's more advertising them.
Yeah, it was weird because, like, okay, so I guess really quickly I'll say, and I think I've said this before, I am not a sports person, like, at all. Like, yeah, I can appreciate them, like, going to a game here and there, obviously. Like, I'm not going to be sitting there pouting, like, fuck this the whole time. Like, I'm going to have a good time, of course, but, like, I don't really follow sports. So with this show, it caught my attention, honestly, because of both of them. I'm like, I like both of them. This is kind of a nice way to, like, get people interested. And, yeah, over the course of the show, I definitely enjoyed their parts for sure. And then the rest was... I mean, it was interesting to hear more about football and how the leagues work, but those were the less exciting-ish episodes, I guess.
Oh, you see, that's the thing I enjoy more. I enjoy more the running, the business side of the football and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, let me clarify. I was also interested, but what I mean is, like, maybe for the average person who doesn't care as much, those are going to be, but kind of by comparison, a little less maybe exciting, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I think something that kind of ruins it with documentaries like this for people like me is I knew what happened in the end.
Right, because you follow it.
Yeah, because I follow it. So some of the suspense at times is sort of like taken out of it.
Right.
I really would recommend like Sunderland Till I Die over this one. So the good thing about Sunderland Till I Die, and this isn't just a review of that, but I will bring it back onto my problem with the Welcome to Wrexham. Wrexham, right?
Yeah.
Sunderland Till I Die they started doing that documentary once Sunderland got relegated from the Premier League, right? And they start this documentary of like, yeah, we're a big club, we're going to get back there, we're doing all this great stuff, we're ready to go back to the Premier League next season, and it just fucking fell apart. Like it was like people have like compared it to like The Office. Because it shows people like who have no idea what they're doing, trying to run a football club. Like like the team's in like absolute catastrophe, and there's a guy having a meeting about like, should we get like techno music burn through the speakers as the team come out? And then there's like 5 people just like looking at the camera, like, what the fuck is this guy on about? Like, like we got other things that are bigger priorities than this.
That's funny.
And it went on for 2 seasons, and both seasons were fucking shocking. But to bring it back, I like seeing that. I like seeing a catastrophe happening in real time.
People like watching a train wreck.
But then there are other football documentaries I don't enjoy because it's all, we're this pristine club and nothing bad ever happens here.
Yeah.
Everyone's friends and everyone's this and everyone's that. And then, like, sort of this Welcome to Wrexham was similar because, like, they never talked about a player they couldn't get. The first manager they talk about suddenly comes through the door, whereas in that Sunderland documentary, it's like the transfer deadline day. And, like, they're on phones panicking, just trying to get players in. And they're like, he ain't coming. Like, he's not interested. Like, and right, who else are we going to get then? Like, and they're like, okay, you want 2 million instead of 1 million? We'll give it to you. Like, you know, like panicking. Yeah. Whereas this, they're just like, Paul Mullen's a good player, and then it's like cuts to him at the training ground
He's
playing
there.
for
That's
them.
a good point. I didn't think about that. That's funny you mentioned that because I mean, yes, they have a shit ton of money, so I guess they can't spend all of their money, but yeah, they have enough where they could kind of like get what they want. Is what it is kind of how it came off, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like in American sports where people just sort of, you don't really have a say where you play. Most players, they just get sort of thrown around, right? Unless you're like a big player like Tom Brady or something. Yeah. But like my team, I'm a Mill fan, and we're in the second tier, the one just below the Premier League. And it's still big money. Like players probably earn like £10,000 a week or whatever. But I've legit heard about we tried to sign a player, and he just didn't want to live in London.
That's
like his family's up north in Manchester. Yeah. Right. And it's just silly little things like that I find interesting and stuff like that. But there was none of that in this. It was just like, we signed this player. He's good.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I agree. I guess it was interesting to see the dynamics of the town itself. And there was, and I guess to be fair, that's kind of where they put a lot of the focus on the show was how this community needed this more than anything because this was like, I mean, I'm no disrespect to Wrexham. I've never been there. Maybe it's a tourist hotspot now, but like, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot going on there. And they kind of make that a point too of like, this is the thing that brings people together. So if that team is doing horribly, then the whole town just feels like shit. So I guess in terms of like Rob, I think in one of the episodes he was like, yeah, I kind of want to do this because like he enjoys football, like the Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, American football. The Philadelphia Eagles. And like he was like, yeah, I really like this feeling. And he wanted to help this town. I mean, to your point, yeah, they're of course doing it for money. There's always going to be that part of it. But I mean, there is that sense of community, it sounds like, that they wanted to focus on, and they do that for the show. So that was interesting.
My wife was like, why is like this town so fucking like obsessed with football? Like, and why are they making out like it's like because the football club shit? I said to her, like, you don't realize when it's like that lower league, right? So let's say 100 people come from the other team to watch that game, right? Yeah. And like 5,000 people. Now, if you go up 2 divisions, that like triples. Sure. Suddenly that team's making more money. They can hire more people in the community. Yeah. All the restaurants, pubs, all that in the nearby are getting more business. They got to hire more people. More people are making more money in all the shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect, yeah.
It is. And I'm like, when a football club in a local area does well, the area benefits. I'm like, that's what people... It sounds kind of fucked up, like gambling or whatever, but like, you know, because in all fairness, like, a football club shouldn't be what makes a community, essentially. But
Sure.
it has its benefits. It helps. Like,
Yeah.
that's the good thing in that Sunderland documentary is, like, you have, like, the lady who runs, like, the cafeteria for the players, like, yelling at the players they need to win because, like, their jobs are on the line and stuff.
Well, yeah, because like that's the other point that he mentioned is some of the people that they showed in the documentary were just volunteers. They didn't even get paid for working at this club in various different positions. So, yeah, like this is literally they live and breathe by this football club in their town. Which, like, on one hand, it's cool that they have that sense of community, but it's also kind of sad if, like, when shit doesn't go well, like, what else do they have?
Because this is it. I always like having an English accent and living in America. One of the first things. So, who's your club? And then I go, oh, I'm a Millwall fan, and everyone goes, who? And I'm like,
I mean, to be fair, I hadn't heard of it until you told me. So.
yeah. But then they're like, who's your Premier League team? I'm like, mate, don't fucking work like that. Like, get out. Like,
yeah, don't speak on that level to me.
like, when I used to live near people that, like, were 300 miles away from Man United and they supported Man United, I used to, like, roll my eyes and we all used to make fun of them. So when I get Americans who are like, oh yeah, I'm a Man United fan, we're all like, yeah, all right, mate. Okay,
yeah, all right.
Bye.
Yeah.
Give me don't talk to me in that accent and say you're a Man United fan.
Yeah.
But this documentary does show why that, I think, is important and why. Because you can't have that sense of community when you're that far away, like from it. Like when I go back to England and I go to watch my team, I feel like I'm home.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of those things. Like you can't do that when you're on fucking holiday to watch your football team. Like go support your local team. It doesn't matter if they're shit. That's the point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You stick with them through thick and thin, and once again, that is the other part of this. I think once again, the other thing that this documentary does a good job, especially for a lot of Americans or whoever who doesn't watch football, it does show you how ingrained that sport is into all these people's lives. I mean, people are talking about, like, their parents. They went with them throughout, when they were basically, like, still in diapers, and then they're taking their kids, and it's like this generational thing. So, like, that's where I did enjoy watching it, and the football parts were, once again, they were fine. They were interesting. It was interesting to see how these clubs work and learn different aspects of what they have to go through. But yeah, the community aspect is what they focused on quite a bit, and I think that is what draws people into this show. Because, like, if you just go hard on the football the entire time, I think you're probably going to lose people, honestly.
Yeah. No, I'd give it a thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would as well. It was 18 episodes, I think. It had a weird release schedule. They would do like one episode, then release like 4 in a row, and then like 3. It was really weird.
I couldn't figure it out. Like, there's some weeks where we sat down like, oh, we got 3 episodes to watch, and then other weeks we're like, oh, 1, but this one's an hour long.
Right. Yeah, it was very odd. So I don't know. I mean, obviously the club is continuing. They're going to keep playing, but I don't know if this show has been renewed for another season or if they're going to keep documenting it. I don't know if you've heard either way, but
they have said they're going to do a season 2.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because apparently this documentary is making a lot of money for the club.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, it's Hulu, but yeah, I'm sure they're getting a cut. They have to at some point for this. So, I mean, theoretically, they could start at literally any time. I mean, the season, it's still going.
Well, the new season we're about 10 to 15 games in, depending what league you're in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, like, it ends in May. So if they... I mean, you could start editing the beginning, like, now, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I imagine it would come out again the same sort of full-time next year.
Yeah, probably. So, yeah, I mean, if they come out with another season, I'll probably give it a follow. It is interesting, though, and I think they also touch upon this in the show, how them getting so much attention honestly is a little distracting at times. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, like, can they keep this this energy going.
Like one of the coaches being like, "We don't fucking need this right now. We got a game next week."
Yeah, fuck off. Yeah, stop filming me. The coach, what was it, Phil?
Phil Parkinson, yeah.
Phil Parkinson. He was cracking me up because, yeah, he's like the nicest guy, and then they add the little counter every time he says fuck, and it just like constantly he's just going over and over.
Yeah, I mean, that's football as well. It's like media training as well. Like, so my team have never had anything like this, but they had a book where a guy went and spent a year at Millwall called Family, and our manager at the time called Kenny Jackett was like a gentleman, right? Mm-hmm. Any interviews he gave, nicest guy in the world, just seemed like a really down to earth guy. And then there's just this part of the book where they're like watching back a game they'd played, and he says to one of our players, like, "What are you saying to that player you knocked over there?" And he goes, "Oh, it's apologising." He goes, "Don't say that. Say next time you come past me, I'll break your fucking leg."
See, that's the energy I need to get them going.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So yeah, I mean, either way, yeah, definitely a good show. But I will say it honestly has made me appreciate more about kind of what a club goes through and kind of the community around it. And it was interesting. Like I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to start following football necessarily, but like I can appreciate it more, and it was a fun watch. So.
Yeah. It's not just about the sport; it is about everything around it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a good time for sure.
All right,
and we're going to end this one on a bang here. The Munsters by Rob Zombie.
I think I said to you, I've not watched this one because it looked too scary for me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this may as well have been rated R. It's just too frightening for my faint heart, for sure. So I know we've briefly talked about this, I think, before, but like with Addams Family and Munsters, they came out, like the original show apparently came out within a week of each other. And I don't know if that was like, like back in the, 60s? Yeah, apparently it was like very, very close timing for when they originally came out. And I don't know if that was on purpose. Like I don't know the story behind it, or if that was like a coincidental thing or whatever. But either way, they came out essentially roughly around the same time. And I grew up. I mean, not that I'm that old, but like I've grown up watching both shows over the years because of like TV Land back in the day, and then they're like Addams Family's on repeat on like free. Like streaming apps you can throw episodes on. I got Peacock recently because of the Halloween movie, and the Munsters, like the old TV shows on there. So there's different ways you can watch it over the years. And then over the years, they've done reboot movies of kind of both of them as well. But overall, I think people can pretty much agree that Addams Family has beat the Munsters in terms of popularity.
It's more popular. It's more embedded in pop culture, I feel.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been reboot movies kind of over the years, and both have been fun. But yeah, Addams Family, of course, has kind of taken the crown, I think, between the two. And I will say I don't know if I have a great reason for why. Maybe just the charisma of some of the actors maybe was more appealing for Addams Family. Who knows? I honestly like both of those original shows. I think are great. Like I would still recommend watching both of them, honestly. But the Munsters, I think, has more of I'll say like a goofy comedy feel to it. Like, yeah, obviously Addams Family is funny, but like with the Munsters, I don't know, it's like almost more outlandish, I guess. But both are very much like sitcoms, goofy, like that's their shtick. So now fast forward to this recent Munsters movie. So Rob Zombie apparently has always been a fan of the Munsters. He's even incorporated some of his music. Mm-hmm.
I saw like this has like been his passion project. Apparently, getting this movie made.
Yeah. So I think on his album Hellbilly Deluxe, he does a tribute to the Munsters in one of his music videos or songs, if I'm not mistaken. And he's in general, like he's taken inspiration from it. He's just claimed that he's been a fan his whole life, basically. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, he wanted to make this movie, and so it got announced, publicly at least a year or so ago, something like that, and people were kind of hyped to like, oh cool, like he's trying to bring Munsters back, like he seems to be like a huge fan of it, and that's great, cool, let's see what we can do. And then a couple months ago the trailer dropped, and I think universally everyone looked at it and went, what the fuck is this?
Well, it looked like a cross between a direct-to-video sequel to like some like 90s movie.
Yep.
A porn parody.
Yep.
Yeah, it was weird. It was very weird.
So what I've come to find out recently, because it's a universal property. However, at the beginning of the movie, or I mean, you can look this up in the trailer too. It's the production company is called Universal 1440, something like that,
Yeah,
and apparently that has been known as like their direct to video department, basically.
yeah. Because
So
this
that's
came
it.
straight to Netflix, right?
It's no, it's no, yes, it's on Netflix. Yes, sorry,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Munsters show is on Peacock, but yes, the movie is on Netflix. Yes,
yeah.
so it's interesting though because that explains to some extent the maybe I don't want to say low production value per se because some of this I will say some of the set designs are really cool. Like
You can make a cheap thing with something like the Munsters or the Adams Family, though. You can make it work because it is sort of cheesy and a
yeah,
lot of bright colors and
yeah,
stuff.
very campy,
Yeah,
goofy.
you can.
Yeah.
The budget. I say budget shouldn't be an issue, but like budget shouldn't be the main thing holding you back here.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think when it comes to that, the look of everything, I have to give them credit there, especially when they end up in the actual house, which happens a little too late in the movie, but that's fine. But either way, that like the Munsters house that people know from the show, I think he did a good job. Apparently, he did try and fight to make the movie black and white, but they didn't let him
Mm,
because that maybe could have set the mood a little bit better. Um, just to mimic that old feel. So to compensate, that's where he went with like the really over the top, like goofy colors and stuff like that. So when it comes, but back to the trailer for a second, yeah, it just looked really weird. People were skeptical, but then people were like, okay, maybe it's just a rough cut and maybe they weren't ready. So let's, still give them a chance type of thing. And then the movie came out and
mm,
it is just getting blasted with by like everyone of saying like this is an abomination of like what the fuck is this movie. And once again, I want it to be unbiased, but it's like hard to ignore something like that when you
yeah,
start seeing that. So I went in, I tried, like I said, try to be open-minded about it. I think I laughed maybe twice the entire movie,
mm,
and I was like, So I sorry, I guess to explain what it is really, it's technically a prequel to the original series because in the original series, like they have a kid and they're going about their day just kind of like the Addams Family does. But this movie, it's about how the mom and dad, Lily and Herman, met back in it's like Transylvania or wherever they came from, basically, and then how they talked, and then how they then came over to America. So like they don't have their kid yet; they still have their grandpa who's with them, and it's just about that like romance story. But the thing is, okay, first of all, Rob Zombie, he keeps casting his wife in every movie he does. And like nothing against her. I'm sure in the right role she can be good. Like some of his other movies she's fine in. This movie, it feels like she doesn't like she's never it feels like she's never watched an episode of the Munsters of what the
mm,
character Lily is. Like it does not even remotely like mimic what people loved about that character. And then like for Herman, the dad, all of his traits are like not really there. Like he's this goofy like Frankenstein kind of looking character. He's kind of like a goofier Lurch from the Addams
mm,
Family essentially. But he also didn't really act like the character, and
yeah,
it was just like who are these people? Like this isn't what people are used to seeing with these characters. The only one I will say is the grandpa. He actually does a pretty good job of mimicking. I think it was Al Lewis who was the grandpa in the original one, something like that, and he does a good job mimicking him. But like other than that, this movie was just a mess. Like it wasn't funny. It was the acting was off. Like yeah, I don't know.
it's I've never watched a Rob Zombie movie. Right.
Hmm.
I think I saw like Grindhouse where he did like a trailer for one of them, and I think that's the
Hmm.
extent of stuff I've seen.
Yeah.
But I watched the trailer and then I read like, oh yeah, he's been trying to get this made for like 20 years or whatever. I'm like,
Right.
this
Are
is
you
what
sure?
you tried to get made for 20 years?
Yeah.
Like I spoke about Avatar recently, right? And I know
Uh,
people give that movie shit and stuff, right? But in 2008 or whatever, when you saw that trailer and you're like, okay, that's why he waited 20 years to make this.
hmm
right? Like that made sense. Like,
Yeah, and that's where like this is why I'm so baffled because he likes these characters. There's a lot of passion put into it, but between like bad casting, maybe not potentially budget could have been a thing. I think maybe the studio forced him to make some creative decisions. I think it just fell apart. Like it was just a mess, to be honest, and that's a shame because I think once again, if you like, literally after I watched the movie, I went and threw on some old episodes of Munsters, and I'm like, okay, am I just like not remembering this correctly, and maybe the show always sucked? And I'm like, no, I turned on an episode, and within 5 minutes, I'm cracking up. The show's hilarious. Like it's still funny to this day. Similar with
yeah.
Old Adam's Family, to be honest. So
I also don't think comedy is. I don't want to say not very funny anymore, but like, when's the last really good comedy movie that came out?
I'm sure I've seen some, but yeah, none like immediately come to mind.
But I don't think there's very many good comedic actors or writers in Hollywood right now because
Sure.
it used to be that everyone, Adam Sandler, Jim Carrey, all those people from like the 80s, the 90s, right?
Yeah.
They got out of stand up into the movies and
Right.
took their talent there, right?
Right.
Whereas now it seems like, Kevin Hart is still touring.
Mm-hmm.
There's money in like stand up now that there never used to be, right? Yeah. And he's like probably the biggest stand up right now, right? And like he just sold like an arena near me out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the biggest Kevin Hart fan. I'm just talking about like I'm not saying he's like hilarious or anything, but like that is
Sure.
probably the biggest stand-up comedian going right now, right? He's starring in movies with The Rock and still touring.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. It used to be like you'd get a few comedy movies every year that were like hilarious. And no one's really replaced that now. I don't think that there's many people in Hollywood now that really know funny.
Well, yeah, like and I'm not going to claim Will Ferrell is the greatest actor of all time or comedian, but like he obviously had a string of all sorts of yearly kind of movies. Like who could be considered like a new Will Ferrell? I can't think of a single person.
Well, also as well, if one got so in the 80s, you had like what was it, the Brat Pack type crew, and then you had like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and the Saturday Night Live crew, John Candy, all the Rick Moranis, right? And then like that sort of spilled over into the 90s, and you had like Steve Martin making comedy movies,
right?
And then in the late 90s, sort of like Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell, all those people came in,
right?
And then sort of like mid 2000s, you had like Steve Carell and the Hangover people, whatever, Zach Galifianakis, and then it felt like it ended. No one really replaced them.
It's weird because, like, especially on the SNL side of things, like, I mean, I haven't watched SNL in years, but like earlier this year, I was like, you know what, let me just check it out because they throw their episodes on YouTube usually the next day, and like none of it is funny. It's the worst shit ever, and like that used to be like the gold mine. Yeah, you take it from there, and then they go on to be movie stars. But like none of them are funny.
But even if you look at the last 10 years, who's really doing anything now? Like, the biggest people like that Kate McKinnon, right? She's been on Saturday Night Live for like 15 years, and she was in like Ghostbusters, and I think she was in Bridesmaids, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, but then like even then, she's normally like 4th or 5th listed credit in like a movie that she's in now. It was like Fred Armisen, right? He did that Portlandia. Mm-hmm. And I remember like, I haven't seen him in anything for a while. And it's like the only thing he has coming up is like he's the wizard guy in the new Mario movie. And it's just like, no one.
Well, but I think we've also talked about this as well, especially with like, for example, Top Gun Maverick, which I finally watched recently. But like Tom Cruise and obviously not comedy, but like there are very few like people anymore who bring people into seats anymore. Like those top like either action, comedy, drama, whatever. Like very few of those people that like you're just going to go see them because you like them. And I think to some extent that's contributing to why there doesn't seem to be these types of actors anymore that are even for comedy. Like I don't know who that person would be.
It was who was the other one? Bill Hader, right?
Yeah.
He does Barry. which
Yeah.
I'd argue is, although it's got comedic moments, it's more a drama.
Yeah, the show's great.
You know, like it seems like people aren't taking that step they used to take into being in comedic movies.
Mm-hmm. Which is a
And
shame.
I just don't think there's much comedy in Hollywood right now.
Well,
Even shows, there's not really many, like, we always talk about how much we love old sitcoms and stuff.
yeah.
They're not on anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Every
I wonder though, is it because like I feel like comedy that keeps getting infused into so many things now, where
Mhm.
like there's like the dramedy or like it becomes almost one aspect as opposed to the focus, like a good focused comedy. I guess to your point, like yeah, like I don't know what that would be, and I don't know if it's because because comedy's put into so many other things. It's like oh, well, we have the bases covered. This movie's kind of funny. Just go see that or some something like that.
Yeah, but like I said, like even on the TV side now, like most of the shows that are like you would consider comedies are like only partly a comedy, like Barry. Like
Right.
I know a lot of people don't like him now, but everyone used to love that show Louis.
Oh yeah,
Louis C.K.'s one.
I watched a few of them back
Hmm.
in the day, and I mean, yeah, I
Eh,
laughed. Mm-hmm.
it was more like sad drama though, or like black
Mm-hmm.
comedy, dark comedy. I haven't actually like Taika Waititi is probably the closest thing we have to like mainstream comedy now.
Yeah, I could say that. I mean, even with Our Flag Means Death, the show, which was awesome. I mean, there was absolutely comedy in that, but that was also a drama comedy as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want I will. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it's just a problem across the board. Like,
Yeah, I think you're right. I will say though, the one sitcom I am looking forward to, I think it's at the end of this year, is that '90s show, which they're
hmm,
bringing back, sequel to that '70s show. Well, technically there was a that '80s show, but it failed spectacularly after like I think 6 episodes or something. So I don't think they count that one.
hmm.
But that I mean, if it's gonna be, it's the same writers I believe as that '70s show, so that should be a true sitcom. I'm kind of excited to see that one actually. So hopefully that'll that'll live up to expectations. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyways, yeah, this movie it was just a dumpster fire. Like it was just terrible all around. Acting was bad. Story wasn't particularly interesting. I don't know why I expected it to be any better than what the reviews were saying. But yeah, it's about as bad as the reviews are saying. It is absolutely. I mean, unless you're like a mega Munsters fan and you just have to see everything, I would say, unless you're that, then I would say it's a thumbs down. Like, absolutely, it is not worth your time to watch. It's pretty bad. So,
So
unfortunately,
thumbs down
hmm
then.
thumbs down. So, yeah. So we got let's see, two thumbs down and two thumbs up. I think. All
Yeah,
right, we're
yeah.
balanced, balanced again.
Equally balanced, perfectly
Balanced.
balanced.
Exactly. So, anyways, if you anyone watching out there who's been checking these shows out or movies, let us know what you think. This was part 2 of our Halloween Spooktacular. I don't know if we'll do a part 3. Maybe it'll definitely come out after Halloween, that's for sure. But we might have a couple more scary things for you. We'll see. But until next time, make sure, like I said, like and comment, and then we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everyone.
Bye.